Hi, I'm Donna Brazile, the Gwendolyn and Colbert King Endowed Chair in Public Policy here at Howard University. I am pleased today to be joined with Dr. Wayne Frederick, the 17th president of Howard University. Dr. Frederick, it's good to see you, sir.
Same
I
here.
want to know, Dr. Frederick, how are you balancing your duties and responsibilities, not only as president of Howard University, but also a working physician, a surgeon at Howard University Hospital?
Well, Ms. Brazil, the first thing is always the health and safety of this entire campus is my first responsibility. And so making sure that administratively we are set up right, the infrastructure is there to support our students, our faculty, making sure that the staff who are now deployed really at home, working remotely, can get those jobs done efficiently as well as obviously staying safe. And then in the hospital, on both a personal level and still from an administrative level, making sure that we can provide care to the citizens of DC and making sure that we're doing the right things to be prepared for that. As we see the areas around the country on a rolling basis become areas of clusters and surges in terms of the number of infections, we recognize here in DC that we want to be prepared for that, and Howard University Hospital is going to be a critical part of providing that care.
Howard University received a special appropriation um, with the corona stimulus. Can you let us know, as DC residents, as members of the Howard University community, do you have, do the hospital, do they need anything? Do they need any special equipment, the PPE that we keep
Yeah.
hearing about, the ventilators, the respirators? Are you short on supplies? Do we have enough material to make it through this epidemic?
So I appreciate that question. This COVID-19 pandemic is really drawing on a lot of our resources, from hospital beds to the use of personal protective equipment, and then the different types of medical supplies that come with that. Right now, we're doing well. We've had friends and well-wishers in the city really come out and support us. We've had people donate food for the staff who are working extremely long hours and obviously under very difficult circumstances as they have to put on that equipment for hours, be back and forth, taking care of patients, et cetera. And so we've had that type of support. What we are concerned about, though, is in about 10 to 15 days, we do anticipate in DC, if all the projections are right, that we may see a surge in the number of cases in DC, and therefore the hospital at that point will really begin to be stretched. So what we're doing on this front end is trying to get prepared for that. We've reopened units that we were using for administrative purposes and other types of activity. We've reopened all of those units to provide care. Our plan right now is to really increase the bed count for what we can handle, especially around ICU beds. We've gone out to try to secure the right types of equipment as well. We're working with the DC Department of Health on what some of those items would be as well, and they've been very supportive as well. So it's all about right now getting ready to handle that capacity. We've decreased the amount of elective surgery we're doing as well to ensure that all of us would be ready in order to meet the demand that we believe is coming.
Are we testing enough people in this region to help mitigate the spread of this virus?
That's a good question, and I think it's actually a question for the nation. This is a very mobile country. This is not a country that is easily shut down because of all of the interplay between states. And while you do have governors and mayors like our own mayor, Bowser, standing up things and really getting us to participate in the right behavior, the reality is the way our borders work from state to state is very open. And so we really have to do this as a nation. And so that testing, I think, is critical. And we do have to increase the number of people we're testing. And so people may ask why. What information is that going to give us? The more people we know who have been exposed and the more people we can quarantine and have them isolate themselves from other people, especially during that incubation period that we now know is anywhere from 0 to 14 days, the less people they can then go transmit the disease to. The other very difficult thing with this situation is that there are fairly significant numbers of people who are asymptomatic. And if someone is asymptomatic as well as not tested, they are now walking around actively passing that disease on, the virus on to someone else. And that's where the difficulty with not testing enough people. If we only test the people who get sick or have symptoms, then we have a finite number of knowledge of who actually can be passing this virus on. And all of those asymptomatic people we need to know about. The other category of people we're going to need to understand are the people who've had the disease, have now recovered, and may have some immunity, but we still need to learn about them because can they get reinfected? And that's also an unknown question as well.
When you talk about asymptomatic, what are you referring to in lay people terms?
Sure. You know, the symptoms that manifest themselves when people have this disease, as we've heard, really I would like to say it's a number of different things that people may present with. So a dry cough is probably the most common thing that we've heard, a very high fever, probably almost as common as that dry cough. But there are people who are presenting with muscle aches, general malaise, just not feeling good, shortness of breath as it worsens. And obviously that may worsen into a pneumonia that requires people to get on a ventilator, which is basically assisting that person with the ability to breathe. We've also heard of unusual things like people losing their sense of taste and their sense of smell. And some people, that's the only symptom that they may have. So all of those, I would say, is a symptom complex that people with this disease are manifesting. And what we need to recognize is that there are some people that have none of those at all, but who have definitely contracted the disease. And I myself have spoken to a couple of people that I know who tested positive because they were exposed and found out that they did have COVID-19, but they had no symptoms whatever. Never got a fever, never had a cough, no sore throat, nothing.
There's also this notion that because the weather is getting quite warmer, why is it still necessary to stay inside and to avoid large crowds and large gatherings?
Yeah, that's a very good question. A lot of this is by droplet transmission. So people cough, the droplets that are in the atmosphere with the virus particles, we then inhale those, and that's a risk. People touch surfaces, etc. They've demonstrated already that the virus on certain types of surfaces may survive for 3 days. You touching that surface and then touching your eyes, your mouth, all of those, your nose, all of those mucosal surfaces that are entry points to our bodies for this particular virus. And the reason why we still need to be vigilant is because the virus is highly contagious, and also it is very aggressive when people do get the worst form of this disease. So the mortality rate is much higher than with, for instance, the flu, and it definitely, in terms of how contagious it is certainly more contagious than the flu. And so even though during warm, we usually, as the warm weather starts to come into our season, we do see a decrease usually with the flu. Our concern here is because this is so contagious and it's so aggressive, we still need to be vigilant until we really mitigate all the possibilities of transmission so that none of us can be exposed to it at all.
I know you've heard from many of your colleagues on campus as well as the student body. Can you tell us about the transition from in-classroom instruction to online instruction?
Yeah, you know, that transition we had to stand up in a 10-day period. And so I certainly want to take the opportunity to congratulate our entire campus in terms of participating in that. It says a lot about us as an organization. I think it's an organization that's maturing in terms of our ability to be agile, to do things that are very difficult to do under normal circumstances, and then to do it in that short period of time, you do need a lot of cooperation. And so that cooperation first starts with the faculty. They have been absolutely tremendous in terms of making that pivot, and I know that this was not an easy pivot. For some of them, we had to locate laptop devices that they could use, etc. Over 500 of them had to do training in order to be prepared to get this done successfully. And then the students, who now are scattered all over the world. So you have people who today are waking up in time zones where it still is not quite daytime yet, and taking classes, and that's a difficult adjustment. You have people in circumstances where they're in a house with two parents who are also teachers who may be teaching online as well, and they have to find a quiet space for themselves to be able to participate. So there's a lot of hardship all around to be shared. And obviously we have support staff throughout this university who have really stepped up and been doing telecommuting to continue the work of the university overall. So I have to say I'm tremendously humbled by the effort everyone has put in. I also recognize that it has caused significant hardship that has not gone unnoticed. And so for the sacrifice that everybody has put in, I'm extremely pleased and gratified of the performance of the entire workforce in order to get this done, and the student body to be patient with us as we made this adjustment.
I know many of the students are concerned about going online. Will this impact their ability to get their degrees and obtain their degrees, especially if they're taking courses that require them to be in a lab, other circumstances? What do you tell those students right now about their future and their ability to earn their degree this semester?
Yeah, well, we're trying to ensure that every graduating senior is able to complete his or her degree this coming May. In the areas where we've had labs, the faculty, again, have been tremendous. They've stood up virtual labs to assist the students with that. There are some areas, such as in fine arts, where we have to make some adjustment and get some better accommodations for the students, and we're working on that right now. But the intent is that every graduating senior who's taking a course this semester to ensure that they graduate on time, we're looking to do that. We also don't want anybody to get setback from their graduation in the future as well. And so we also are going to look at the opportunity to make the appropriate adjustments where those can be. Several of these classes certainly can be taught online, and I think you have to be flexible and a bit creative in order to make sure that the right types of information can get to the students so that they can be technically competent and therefore also go out and apply this in the workplace as well. And so the faculty have really worked tremendously to do that. There are some areas, as I said, that we will have to tweak over time for the underclassmen because of some of the classes they're taking now, and we'll obviously make the appropriate adjustments as we get to that point.
How is this impacting students who were expecting to graduate this semester? Have you made any decisions about the spring commencement ceremony?
Sure, we've made one decision, and that was to cancel it. And I know that that is a major disappointment. And some people even wrote me and said, well, you should have said postpone versus cancel. And I have to be honest with you, I don't think that this is something that we should take lightly. And I don't think that this is something that we should leave false hope on the table about. We had a major crisis that was upon us, that we are now living, that we are unsure when it is going to end. And even when it does end, we are unsure how we are going to interact as citizens of this country. How are we going to socialize going forward? How are we going to conduct large gatherings, et cetera, in the future? This is something that potentially is going to change our way of life around some of these issues. And so we have to get that right. And Howard's commencement in particular is extremely special. And there are quite a few things about it that are special, but there are two things that I always think of myself. It's the day before Mother's Day, and the first time my grandmother got on a plane in her entire life was to come to the United States to see me graduate. That's how special that graduation is, and I know what that means to the graduating seniors. And that long walk is also special. It is a symbolic walk, but at the same time, it's a walk that represents the type of effort, dedication that people have put in to make sure that they can get there. And we say to students all the time, it's not about getting a degree. That's not why you come to Howard University. You come to get an education. And that long walk in between the throngs of people, family members, friends, well-wishers, other graduates, faculty, is to remind them of that entire village that supported that effort. And it is very, very symbolic. And so recreating that is something that is very sacred, and we have to be very mindful of that and thoughtful about what we do. And so we will get input from the student body, the faculty, parents, and alum alike, to really make sure that we can do our best job. It will not be the same. I recognize that. And again, I don't want to be false in any way, shape about that. I'm not going to suggest in any way, shape, or form that whatever we do, whether we do it exactly the same way on a different date, that it would have the same feel, etc. But we want to make sure that whatever it is we do it very well, and we honor the sacred nature of that commencement ceremony.
You know, Dr. Frederick, over the last year and a half that I've been a part of the Howard University team, I have become quite attached to the athletic department. I'm a former athlete. I was a student athlete, I should say. How is the athletic department handling this? I know the music department, Howard University has so many great departments, founders library. Um,
Yeah.
is anything still in regular order? Is everything on hold right now?
You know, everything is on hold, and I'm glad that you brought up athletics, because athletics is very difficult. You have some spring sports that were never really played, spring championships, in which athletes who worked hard all year to get ready did not get a chance, to really fulfill their athletic dreams. The NCAA has already taken action to allow athletes who play spring sports to have an extra year of eligibility. Now that's helpful, but
Great.
still, if you think about it, the Howard athlete does so well. 80% of our athletes graduate from the university. So a lot of them are going on to other things. So getting an extra year of eligibility, while it's great if you want to use it, if you attend graduate school or professional school, you may have an opportunity. But the reality is a lot of our athletes are on schedule for graduation and already are thinking of jobs and so on in the future. And unfortunately, for those graduating seniors, they will miss that opportunity despite having an extra year of eligibility. And that, again, is sad. NCAA, by not having March Madness, which is probably one of their largest draws in terms of revenue, now will have to change what their distribution looks like. So the amount of money that would go to the conferences in the past is going to be significantly cut. And those dollars that go to the conferences come back to universities like Howard University to support academic support for athletes, to support infrastructure needs that we may have, et cetera. And so all of those things will be lost. So what athletics looks like on our campus as well may be significantly altered as a result of those changes that have been made. So, the ripple effect of what has occurred here, we will see as potentially a tsunami in some areas of our university life as we go forward. And that's something that's a new norm that we are going to have to get used to. And I could describe that to you in almost any other department on this campus in terms of what it's going to do. When you look at research dollars, being able to do the research work and draw those dollars down, how do people who work on research grants get paid? They get paid because of the work that they do on research. Well, we've shut that down. Are the agencies still going to allow us to draw those dollars down and pay them? And then going into the future, does that leave a gap in your research that you now have to come back and try to recreate? And so there's a lot of a large amount of ripple effect that, like I said, could turn into a tsunami in some areas. And the other thing I should say, Ms. Brazile, since you did bring up music, I do want to take the opportunity as well to pass on my condolences to the Howard family in general, but also specifically to the family of David Driscoll. Dr. Driscoll is a graduate of Howard University, was on this campus in many, many ways, very supportive of what we've been trying to do with fine arts, and was a dear friend. And unfortunately, he passed yesterday. And again, yet another giant that we've lost in our community, but one for whom we are going to pay tribute by what we do going forward.
I know how University also have graduate studies, School of Divinity, the law school. Any information we should share with our viewers on the status of those departments and those schools?
So each of those schools are going to decide how they move forward in terms of online. And so they have already made some of that pivot and are continuing to do that. we have to start asking questions about where or when the bar exam is going to take place, those types of things. And again, all of these things that we've done in our academic lives have been done in a very, congregational fashion, where we've brought everyone together, and we probably have to relook at those types of exams and so on that will take place. Look at what's happening with churches. I think even our Divinity School, I'm sure, knowing Dean Pierce, next year they're probably going to look at what do you do when your congregation is scattered, but your faith is still centralized and strong, and how do you minister to your community when they can't actually come together as they may do on their Sabbath. And I think all of those things are going to be lessons that we will then have the opportunity to apply to what we do, using telehealth, social work, trying to engage with your clientele. I think all of these are things that we're going to now have to incorporate in our curriculum and in our own delivery of instruction going forward.
Are there still students on campus or living close by the university, and how are they being serviced? Those who are unable to go home during this pandemic.
There are no students on campus, and I'll explain that a little more in detail. What we have done is a couple dozen students who could not get home. One, because quite a few of them were international students, and then a few that just had circumstances that would not let them go home. We had a couple of people who came to us out of foster care, and so the lead time they need for what they do in the summer just wouldn't allow for the appropriate thing to happen, for them. So we put all of those students up in apartments in Maryland. We have a couple of graduate students who are living there as well, so that they can have some semblance of normalcy of what would usually occur when they do live on campus and when they are staying in our residence halls. For the students who could not get home, one of the other things that I have to do is to give kudos to my board of trustees led by Chairman Mobley and quite a few alum, who I know want to remain anonymous for different reasons, but I have to thank them for stepping in and stepping up to help us support those students and to pay the rents that were necessary, as well as buy plane tickets and bus tickets, and in some cases buy gas cards so that they can get home. So I'm very, very thankful again for the Howard community showing such strong support.
What can we do to help the Howard University community as DC residents, as people in the Maryland, Virginia area? I'm one of those who care about the students. I care about their future. How can we be of help and service? Howard University, as you well know, is such a big part of our city, our community. It's the Mecca in many ways. Crampton Auditorium, Rankin Chapel. What can we do to help you and the people at Howard University?
The first thing is to stay safe and healthy, to continue to practice social distancing, because the first thing is, as a herd in our community, as bison, we want every bison to make it through this. And so we want everyone to stay safe and healthy first and foremost. The reason we were aggressive about getting students off of campus and out of the residence halls is because today I'm reviewing a plan where we may have to use one of our residence halls, for instance, to add hospital beds for what may be a surge. And so that safety, that's being safe and staying healthy is really, really key. The second thing is to continue to stay connected to us. We are trying to push out communications as much as possible. While we don't have the normal rhythm of what would be happening on campus, Spring Fest, the balls that the students put on, all of those things, they are making efforts to do some of those things virtually. And so we do want to continue to stay connected. I think as we talk about social distancing, we want to make sure that we stay connected emotionally, and especially during this period of time. There are many people who are going to need support as their loved ones get ill and unfortunately, as some of them may pass. And so we have to, as a community, keep coming together and finding ways to connect. And then the third thing that would really be helpful during this period of time is we've stood up an emergency fund in conjunction with the Howard University Alumni Association. They do this every year around this time. They really support and help graduating seniors clear their balances to get to that finish line. And they have stood this up and really broadened it. So for those students who may be in circumstances where they have some type of difficulty or need, this fund is to certainly help them. And so we want people to go to our main homepage at howard.edu and look for that fund. There's an orange and a red banner at the very top, and you can click on that and you will see opportunities to support that. And so we want our community to continue to support our students as well.
Well, Dr. Frederick, I know with all of the responsibilities you have, president of Howard University, a surgeon, a physician, this is also a very deeply personal time. You're also a father, a spouse, you're a community leader. You're wearing, as I mentioned earlier, so many hats. What are your closing thoughts to many of us? As you know, I'm a native Louisianian, a New Orleanian. We learned just recently that one of the patriarchs of jazz, Dr. Marsalis, passed away. Wynton's father, Ellis Marsalis, was a giant. He taught us all the instruments, even when we didn't have the music. So, what are your closing thoughts during this moment of crisis, and how can we show our better angels, not only to our children, but to each other during this pandemic?
Sure. I tell people all the time that two of the people that I admire the most in this life are my son and daughter. And getting to spend this much time with them, my 15-year-old son and my 13-year-old daughter, has been incredible because I've seen the things that they're focused on, the things that they say, the humanity in them, how they're filtering the news. And I think the biggest thing that I can share with you that everyone should do is just for us to be selfless.
Thank you, Dr. Frederick, for joining us. And thank you for all of the work that you're doing at Howard University and Howard University Hospital. Good luck and God bless you and God bless Howard University, sir.
Thank you, and thank you again for holding the chair. And I have to shout out to Gwen and Colbert King for their generosity and again for being such great alumni.
Thank you, sir.
This program was produced by WHUT, Howard University Television, and made possible by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.